How do you know that's a real trans person? How do you not know that's a f***ing creep?
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it.
Who you wound up supporting in the election?
It's none of your business.
These are times celebrities destroyed wokeness, like this time when actor Denzel Washington was asked by a journalist who he voted for, to which he responded with this.
Mr. Washington, you're here in D.C. during an interesting time with the transition in the White House. Just wondering who you wound up supporting in the election and why.
Go ahead now. Fences.
How about this? I don't know if you saw it. There's a fake news story going around. It got thousands of shares online. You saw that. And I just thought you might want to clear it up because people are confused.
There's a few words that start with F and end with K, but that one ends with E, but it starts with F.
Yeah, but just too vague. You got to be specific right now. F, K, and E.
What was the question?
Well, that was a question. Who you wound up supporting in the election, presidential election?
It's none of your business.
None of my business?
None of your business.
Well, I'm only asking.
Then, the journalist asked Denzel for his opinion on the reforms that Donald Trump should conduct, and instead of going crazy with an answer like many woke people, Denzel shows us what a humble man he is.
Let me ask you this. What issue do you hope President-elect Trump tackles? What's number one in your mind with the new administration?
I don't know. I'd have to be more informed to just say off the top of my head the number one issue. I'm not sure. Education, jobs, health. I mean, there's so many.
When asked to comment on race relations in America, Denzel gave some wisdom to all the woke people out there.
Right now, under President Obama, over the last 8 years, in your mind, have race relations improved under his leadership?
Race relationships have to do with race relationships. You're white or whatever you are. I'm black or whatever I am. We're standing here talking now. That's how we get things done. You can't legislate love. The President of the United States can't legislate us into liking each other. We have to step forward and ask questions about each other and engage. There's no law that says, because I'm president, you all got to get along now.
Next up is this time when actor Morgan Freeman was asked to give his opinion on Black history, in which he gave this response.
Black History Month you find
ridiculous.
Why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, well, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man. I know you as Mike Wallace. You know me as Morgan Freeman.
But next up is another moment of Denzel Washington, where he went in on the idea of misinformation.
So what is the long-term effect of too much information? The polarization of the electorate? A meaner-spiritedness?
And false information as well, because the whole fake news thing.
Pick one. It's not just one. That's the flavor of the day. Every day is something else. People have to understand, are you using your device or is your device using you? Can you put it down? Can you turn it off?
You're talking about literally the places people get their information from.
I don't care what information. Pick one. Phone, television. It used to be news. Now it's opinions. Oh, glasses. We have 3 experts on the right, 3 on the left. Let's discuss. Ooh, light bulbs. We have 3 experts on the right. That's not news. That's opinions. Well, over and over and over. Cycle. What is the long-term effect of too much information? If you're sitting there and you're thinking it's the gospel, what I'm saying to people is, to all of us, I'm not knocking the phone. What I'm saying is we have to understand, we have to at least ask ourselves, around the world, you here in England, wherever you are, what is it doing to us?
In another interview, he attacks the news in the media for no longer caring about giving the best information, but rather being the quickest, regardless of whether it hurts people.
There's been a lot of buzz about this fake news. You were the subject of a fake news story.
Oh, yeah, what'd they say? I was running for president? No, I voted. No, what'd they say?
You switched your support.
I switched,
yeah. What do you make of all the fake news and it affects
If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed.
So what do you do?
That's a great question. What is the long-term effect of too much information? One of the effects is the need to be first, not even to be true anymore. So what a responsibility you all have to tell the truth, not just to be first, but to tell the truth. We live in a society now where it's just first. Who cares? Get it out there. We don't care who it hurts. We don't care who we destroy. We don't care if it's true. Just say it, sell it. Anything you practice, you'll get good at, including BS.
You told me last time.
Okay. But you heard me? Does that make sense?
But this next moment is even more powerful when Denzel talks about systematic racism and why it's wrong to blame the system instead of the household.
You talked about your people from Mount Vernon saying that, you know, like they've done like 40 years in the penitentiary together. So, and, you know, incarceration rates in America has been a problem, especially as opposed to minorities. And Roman delves into the issues around the legal system. Do you think we've made any headway?
I think it's more important to make headway in our own house. By the time the system comes into play, the damage is done. They're not locking up 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
You know, I was in Chicago a couple of 3-4 weeks ago, and we saw these little kids on bikes with masks on the side of their head, like 5 or 6 of them. And the driver said, "Yeah, they're little yummies." I said, "Who?" He said, "Little yummies. Look up, Google Little Yummy." Little Yummy was an 11-year-old murderer.
Wow.
And you look at his picture, you'll see the headshot of him, and he's like this. And he got murdered at 11 by a 14-year-old.
Wow.
Who's doing life now, and a 16-year-old.
It makes no sense.
You blame the system? Where was his father? It starts in the house.
Lil Yummy was an 11-year-old kid living in Chicago who was killed by a fellow 14-year-old gang member. His motivation for the murder was that he believed Lil Yummy was going to snitch and expose the gang's criminal activity to the cops.
It makes no sense.
You blame the system? Where was his father? It starts in the house. It starts in the home. And yeah, well, my father got locked up. Well, where was his father?
Then, Denzel goes on to tell about his own experience growing up and how his household kept him in check.
Like I did talk about my 3 closest friends, and they did, 15 to 25, one did 28, this and that. I was the only one of the 3 that had a father in my life, even though my parents were together. But I still had a father who was a gentle man and a good example, and they didn't. We can blame the system if we want, but they didn't lock any of us up at 7.
Yeah.
We were all doing enough to get locked up at 13. My parents sent me in another direction. They didn't have anybody to help them, and they kept doing what they was doing, and the system got them. So I don't, the system is rigged, but why, all the more reason not to help it.
But on a more serious note, longtime Hollywood director Quentin Tarantino went on a talk show and was praised for not apologizing to the woke crowd attacking him. But Tarantino then goes deeper and exposes the toxic woke culture of Hollywood and how it has changed over time.
Ideology is more important than art.
Way more, certainly to the awards.
Yeah. And it's just, it's like, ideology trumps art. Ideology trumps individual effort. Ideology trumps good. Ideology trumps entertaining.
There's 2 kinds of movies, virtue signalers and superhero movies.
Yeah.
Are you bullish on the future of movies? Because...
Well, look, you have to always look at it.
Are we going to get back to that place?
Look, this happens, this comes in waves. This absolutely comes in waves, all right? So it's like, okay, just looking at the 40s, all right, that was during the wartime, but that's also the time that you had film noir, where you actually, even though with the Hays Code, you had these dark, dark stories that were being told. But then after the war was won, then you had the 50s, which was the first of the completely homogenized decades, where you couldn't say shit if you had a mouthful, all right? And every bestseller, every play that was turned into a movie, if there was anything sexual about it or anything, that's all going to be drained out of the movie. It's going to be weaned out of the movie. It's just the way it is. And then, to me, it's one of the worst decades in Hollywood.
Next up is Matthew McConaughey, who during a speech expresses his truth in old values despite them being talked down upon by the industry he is in.
We need to invest in mental health care. We need safer schools. We need to restrain sensationalized media coverage. We need to restore our family values. We need to restore our American values. And we need responsible gun ownership. responsible gun ownership. We need background checks. We need to raise the minimum age to purchase an AR-15 rifle to 21. We need a waiting period for those rifles. We need red flag laws and consequences for those who abuse them. These are reasonable, practical, tactical regulations to our nation, states, communities, schools, and homes. Responsible gun owners are fed up with the Second Amendment being abused and hijacked by some deranged individuals.
But this was extremely tame compared to when talk show host Joy Behar tried to label him as anti-gun out of nowhere, and he did not respond well.
Before deciding to focus on your family, do you think political office is in your future? Can you see that?
If it's where I would deem myself to be most useful,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, as far as office, I will always measure what category I can be most useful. Let me go through.
Do you think you
part of
could
my
get
time.
elected in Texas being anti-gun?
Do I think I could get elected in Texas being anti-gun? One thing about if me in politics is to give you a direct statement right there is be playing a game that I'm not interested in playing.
Okay. Next up is the biggest podcaster of all time, Joe Rogan. During an episode with Dr. Brett Weinstein, they talked about how wokeness is taking over universities, and Brett opens up about getting fired when he opposed the wokeness.
There is this event called Day of Absence, which was a long-standing event at the college where basically at first black people and then later on more generally people of color did not come to work, and they held discussions separately. And then in 2017, they changed this to a request that white people not come to campus. And I responded to this, and I said that was unacceptable. This was a public college. I wasn't going to be told I couldn't teach my class. And that did cause a bit of a firestorm. But that firestorm was embedded in a much longer battle that had begun to simmer when the new president of the college, George Bridges, showed up and impaneled a committee effectively to suggest mechanisms for restructuring the college. And the mechanisms were insane. They were a recipe for destroying the place, and it was my obligation as a faculty member to point out that it would be a terrible idea for us to adopt these policies.
Joe then asks about what other things were implemented in the woke college.
What were the other policies that he was trying to implement?
Well, let's take, for example, the one that Heather and I were most troubled by was a proposal that every faculty hire needed to be justified on the basis of it in some way addressing inequity. And so you can imagine an environment where you need to hire a mathematician or a chemist, and the answer is, well, you can't really hire anybody whose background doesn't include some strong evidence of their being an activist. And so anyway, that would have been debilitating to the college.
Brett then goes on to show that universities with excessive wokeness is even more racist problem they are trying to defeat.
Truly exceptional geniuses, like outliers. Like, what do they do to the other people that don't meet up to those expectations?
Well, that's one of the terrible things about these diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives is that the right way out of the problem is to herald those people and to provide them the opportunities that will allow them to flourish. Instead, they get dragged into a group based on something like skin color, and their exceptional capabilities aren't allowed to shine through. It's basically it's considered counterproductive or race trading, really.